But now the kind of controversial topic is like transgender folk. Okay. So people that have transitioned into a different, into the other gender or whatever. But the very controversial topic at the moment is transgender sports. So I don't know if you've like heard about all this controversy, but it's like basically the controversy is transgender women. Transgender women. So people that have transitioned from male to female and are now living as females. Those women are now competing in female sports. And because biologically, they were born as men and maybe they lived, a lot of their lives as male. Yeah. They have biological advantages over the female. So they're dominating a lot of female sports. Yeah. And so that's like the kind of controversial topic because on one hand, so I want to hear your opinion on this, but on one hand, I'll lay out the kind of arguments. So the transgender folks are saying, we are women, like even though we weren't born as, we weren't given like the body parts, but we are technically women and we shouldn't be excluded from sports. Sports is a big part of culture and society. And they're saying that if we're excluded from sports, then we're still feeling excluded from the rest of society and all that stuff. Yeah. On the other hand, there's a reason why men and women's sports are separated because there are definitely biological differences between 100%. Men and women. And especially when it comes to sports, unfortunately, women tend to have, it's a different sport. Like it's definitely a different sport for women and for men. So, so those are the two arguments. What are your thoughts?
Well, I think it is a really interesting one. And I think like you bring up a good point where you have to look at it like biologically, I think personally, because if you look at other species of animals, not just humans, but quite often there are biological differences between men and women, right? So you look at most like primates or, other mammals, and quite often the man will be, have more muscle mass, be able to do certain things that maybe the females, they can do them, but maybe not to the same level or ability, if that makes sense. Yeah. And I think so on one hand, I'm like, I think it might be giving certain, like if for example, trans women were to compete in like the Olympics or something, that might be like a kind of an unfair advantage because they, do have a lot of components or physique of a man, although they're taking hormones and doing whatever else. On the flip side, I guess given the amount of hormones and everything else that they're going to be taking as a trans woman, would that impact their performance? So in a sense
I'll tell you a little bit about that part. So the hormone part. So again, I haven't done enough research on this, but based on what I've read, in certain parts of the world, I can't remember, maybe like in the UK or something, I can't remember. Like honestly, in certain countries, there are certain rules as to like, you have to be on like hormone therapy for like a year or something like that. And it does change things a bit. I think it definitely does, change, the performance a little bit. But in certain parts, I think in the US or something, there aren't really regulations at this point about like how long you have to be on hormone therapy and all of these things. So we've seen like the video I seen was like a news story about two kids in high school that were female, and then they transitioned in high school. And almost as soon as they transitioned, they started competing in the track team, the female track team. And of course, now they're winning scholarships and doing all kinds of stuff. And I think that's the part where I feel like there needs to be some level of regulation because I don't know, like you can't just have someone literally just saying, oh, I'm going to transition and start hormone therapy, and then immediately they can go and compete in women's sports. Like we have to, it's a tough situation. I understand that. That's the difficult part.
It is tough because if you think about it, like look at me and you, for example, right? So let's say you were a competitive weightlifter or something. You know what I mean?
Oh my God. Can you imagine you and I competing? Okay, continue. Sorry.
But imagine I'm like, okay, you know what? Actually, I'm going to transition and do the hormone therapy, whatever else, but start competing against you right away. I mean, there's no like, yes, we're the same age, we're the same, in some aspects, but it's like, how is that fair? I think
it's not fair. That's the thing.
Exactly. I think with regards to this, I think also my personal opinion is I think maybe there needs to be, because we're saying, you use that example of the high school kids on the track team that were able to get these scholarships and really, beat a lot of the females that were on the track team. But I think in general, there needs to be some kind of testing or like some scientific experiment or whatever to see if, someone that has been on hormone therapy for, let's say, a year or two, do they have an unfair advantage to other women competing based on...
Yeah, I think that some of the argument is... Okay, so one of the arguments from the transgender people, they're saying, and I'm sure there are transgender people that still also think this is unfair too. But the people that are, fans of the idea of transgender women still competing within the women's sports, they're saying that there's never like a level playing field. So they're saying like it's always going to be unfair no matter what. So even if you are women and within women's sports, people are going to have certain physical advantages over others. And like that is true. I do agree with that part.
Yeah.
But I do think that when it comes to... It's like the same, like, of course, it's never a level playing field, of course.
Yeah.
But there are certain things that are just too much of an advantage. Like, I don't know. It's hard.
It's a tough one. And I think my own personal, like how I feel about this is I feel that if it can be proven in some way that, okay, I understand what you mean about like certain, there is always going to be some kind of advantages, right?
Yeah.
But if they can say that, or if they can like prove that without bias, that there's not a completely unfair, like a hugely unfair advantage for someone that's trans to compete with other females or, whatever, then I would say definitely they should be competing. But if it is the fact that by being trans, by being trans and by like having a lot of those physiques that are still, inherently you're biologically a male, but you're transitioning into a female.
Yeah.
If that gives you such an unfair advantage, then I don't think that you should be allowed to compete necessarily.
Yeah.
So I think if it can be proven that there's not a hugely unfair advantage, then I would agree with that.